Namaste, guys. Welcome to the foundationmethod.com. I'm Cam, and I'm sitting here with my sister from another mister, my soul sister, Miss Michelle Cannon. And she's going to talk to us today about her journey and her transformation. And she's got a beautiful transformative process which she's pioneered and which she mentors and facilitates on many, many different levels. But I'll let her tell you all about that stuff. Yeah, I guess to start with, yeah, I'm just going to welcome Mish and yeah, rather than me give the rundown of who you are and what you're all about, I'll hand over to you and just give us a rundown of I guess what is the main thing that you're doing at the moment, the process of soul apprenticeship.
All right. Thanks for having me, Cam. Yeah. Who am I? I am Mish, otherwise known as Michelle Cannon. Yeah. The 5 phase transformational process is a process that I've coined the Soul's Apprenticeship. I mean, how many times have we been in our life experiences? And I know for myself anyway, I was like, if someone could just give me the manual, could someone just give me the manual on how to do this human thing?
Yeah.
You know? And it was like in the early days, and I mean, we've known each other for a long time now, and we saw each other in a lot of those early days of,
Mm,
you know, into a lot of brick walls
mm,
and recurring life cycles, patterns, behaviors, and it didn't matter how much work I did. It's like bang, there it was again, and it didn't matter what pillar of my life it was in: mental, physical, spiritual, financial, personal, professional, relationship, time to myself, and the relationship to others. And I just continually felt like I felt like I was hexed at some stages. I really did. It's just like there was no way out. And some of the deepest, darkest corridors I was in, the deepest bedridden 3-month depressions, the full-blown PTSDs, the beautiful people in my life that had passed unexpectedly. Some of them I found, as you know, the toxic relationships, the the highs of the highs in the career path to the lows of the lows and being penniless. It was just like enough. And I just got to that WTF moment, what I like to call the WTF moment, hands in the air. And it's what I now call the waking to freedom moment, when, finally that Mack truck hits and it's got your attention. It's like
yeah.
that time that you look yourself in the mirror and, yeah, anyway, I did. It was just like, girlfriend, who's the common denominator in every single one of these scenarios?
Yeah.
And that was the day, right? That was the day I had to take 100% ownership of my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I started to do over the years is I'd find insight and understanding
Mm.
from different modalities, different therapies, different sessions, books, the gamut, but it was like, how many more did I need to do?
I was
So
just about to say you're also a traditional Chinese medicine master
practitioner.
practitioner and therapist, and so like your learning cycles of like diving into understanding this stuff were very committed. You really wanted to explore understanding how this this healing process happens in people, and you went about and
100%.
did it, and
100%. I mean,
I understood some of it, so it was great.
yeah, you were my practice pincushion for a while. I love it. Love it. Yeah, look, 25 years ago, I started studying. 25 years ago, I started my bachelor in traditional Chinese medicine. And since that time, I have studied everything from A to Z and in between, every acronym to, like I always say, from, shamanism to science. And again, a lot of those modalities, I found pieces in. TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, was my foundation. It really was. Once I got to TCM, when I started studying when I was 28, um, it started to make a lot more sense. I'd already done a lap around this planet running. I left home initially when I was 14 years old from quite an emotionally volatile home. Took off traveling when I was 21, was supposed to be gone in 6 months and came back 6 years later. Um, and in that time, I was also, unbeknown to me at the time, collecting a lot of incredible information. I met with beautiful cultures and healers. I found myself in these incredible spaces and places and learning from these people and ancient texts as I journeyed, but I hadn't fully come through to the consciousness to come into the integration and ownership of my experience. And it was in a pretty dark time. It was in a pretty dark time. I was actually listening to a discourse from the Dalai Lama, and I don't know what it was about this one line, but in the people always laugh at my accent, my Dalai Lama accent, but it's like
Which one will it be today?
it sounds a lot more Indian apparently. But he was just like, don't take my word for it, try it on and see if it fits. And I don't know what it was, because it wasn't something that was forced upon me. But what I'd come to understand is that I'd studied so much, I'd done so much, but I was still having these defaults. And even in my clinical practice, watching people go so far and then have that elastic band rebound, and boom, there was the cycle again. Boom, there was the cycle again. It's like, what is this? What do we do to crack the code? And that's when the light bulb started to come on, and I was born. I took all of those processes that worked for me and put them into a whole entire process. So the compartmentalization, there was a transformation of unconscious to conscious, from fear to freedom, from pain to pleasure, and understanding how to translate, transition, and transform. And for me, I feel the greatest contribution I bring is the translation of the human experience.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can vouch for that doing the process as well. It gives you, or it gave me. I'm just going to talk about my experience, but it gave me a perspective shift that enabled me to view feelings that used to be like contractive. I'm using more of a TCM type of explanation, contractive experience, that I used to want to either medicate or run from or hide from or suppress, and realizing, that was giving me, messages and understandings, that could help point me towards the freedom by balancing that thing that was in contraction. So it was just another way. I found doing your work, like, it gave me another tool to to view and understand my feelings mostly, but also how to understand the parts of me that were speaking to me, and I uncovered a really powerful sub personality that I affectionately call James. And James came to me, and he came at a part at a time in my life where I really needed him to keep me safe when I was a little boy, because my dad was making me the man of the house, and I failed at that and broke my brother's heart. And so I created this belief that I was, this untrustworthy, not successful type of guy. And when I did your process, that was the first time I met James, and I got to name him and befriend him. And realize he did some really great things for me when I was little, and he helped me keep myself safe and fit into the family. And there were all these wonderful gifts that came out of James, as well as, being a good waiter and, working well, these overcompensations that you make to try and, which turn into wonderful gifts. But, all of that stuff has sort of surfaced with me for doing the soul apprenticeship. But in these episodes, I like to kind of like talk a little bit about what were some of the experiences before this process. So like, you've touched on some of them, saying that, the darker days, the the depression and those sort of things. So I like to try and explore just a couple of examples of what the life was like in the unconscious days, and then what were the defining WTF moments for you, and then what did you do, and then what happened afterwards. So what were some of the defining moments that you can remember? I guess when we first met, I think you were already on the awakening journey, but times before we met, and you were sharing about, maybe the Avalon days or back in London or something like that. You went through some pretty intense experience that, were creating pain that you just couldn't get a bearing on, that was creating confusion for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Some of them, the most significant hits, so to speak. And this is, again, we have these negative experiences that are bad, that are wrong. You know what I mean? And so many negative experiences kept happening to me. Like I said just before, I had to believe I was hexed because,
Mm,
20, I found my best girlfriend's baby passed from cot death, tried to revive him, couldn't bring him back. Both my brothers passed of substance, trying to escape their own pain. And as humans, we don't know what to do with pain. And I experienced a lot of it as I sort of touched on before. I came from a very tumultuous, emotionally volatile home.
mm.
And, you know, the only way to know at some stages, depending on the home environment, was if I was safe was with my photos were up or down. I'd sort of walk in and look at the mantelpiece and go, photos up, photos down. Should I be here or shouldn't I be here? All right.
Every time. That's
Right.
as opposed to, I'm going in for a hug. Get out of here. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so and many friends where they knew that the mission knock on the door, it's like, need a bed. And I've always been so blessed with such beautiful friends. So I always had somewhere to go to.
Mm,
Um, but it's and finding mum passed away, I think was the benchmark,
mm,
doing a whole around this planet, running from the very home I'd been running from to come home to the home I'd been running from. And my mum was the spiritual healer that I detested and never wanted to be. I fought every part of myself not to be that part of myself. And as you do, but you end up denying a deep essence of who you are. And so coming home and finding mum passed away, she had a heart attack in the spa bath, is really where I started to come home, is
mm,
really where I started to come home to the soul essence of myself. I was in an element of awakening when we first met
mm.
in the hospitality days. Yeah, and that's where I started studying, and I was studying during the day, working the nights, and
A lot
we
of
would be.
the progression that I've seen from you over the years, when we first met and when you were studying, um,
Mm,
like you've always had a very generous heart and a very generous spirit. But I feel like my intuition
mm.
of what I observed, because I guess is it correct to say that finding your mum would have been one of the big WTF moments that began that real genesis of conscious awakening? Is that what you were mentioning there?
Well, I mean, when you find that many people and you lose that many people close to you, you start to question, like,
Cool.
WTF, what's going on here?
Yeah. So it was kind of like a build up, and then this final thing with your mum, that was kind of like the big, like now it's time
Crescendo.
to really look into this.
Yeah.
Because what
Yeah.
what I was going back to, what I was going to say is, I feel
Mm,
like you'd done an apprenticeship which was
mm,
learning cognitively. It was the head, like you knew the science, you knew the acupressure points, you got the psychology, you were very good at helping support and very good at counseling people, and there was
mm,
this journey from the head to the heart, and it was like this.
mm.
It was this integration that I watched with you where
Actually, I
everything.
actually think it was the other way around.
Oh,
It was
really?
I was always in heart, but I wasn't in head.
Oh, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, I actually thought I was always in heart, but because I was dyslexic, I didn't know how to read or write until I was 26, right? I did everything to avoid. I was in special needs class in school. And
Mm,
people don't believe me when I tell them that now. They're like, how? How do you write the way you write? And I'm like,
mm,
the learnt skill, right? But I always had the hard expression, but I didn't have the intellect. I didn't
So
trust
do you think
intellect.
more? It's more. I guess what I was observing was the consistency
Mm,
of those two things coming together, the
100%.
intellect and the heart. And I think
Mm,
that's because it's like people can be cognitive, very smart, or they can live in passion and the whim of the moment, and live
mm,
life by the seat of their pants, and just go with the flow and do all those type of things. But the true
mm,
power is where those things merge. The conscious mind,
mm.
um, as well as the integration of the heart and the body experience. Once you get that integration, I feel like part of it's just maturity, but then obviously not, because I work a lot in different areas with people that are a lot older than me who are not getting it yet.
Mm,
But
mm,
I feel
mm,
like during that time was where that integration really started to consolidate for you, and I noticed it was quite a quick acceleration not long after your
mm,
mum passed to this finding of like a deepening of power for you. Like it was a real,
Mm.
it was like
Oh,
these
100%.
roots just suddenly spread,
Mm,
and you were home, and you felt strong,
mm,
you felt anchored, and
mm.
and it wasn't long after that you were like, oh, I've made this process, I've done this thing, and I'm like, oh, what? What have you been doing?
Mm,
And then you sort
mm.
of described it to me. I'm like, this is not a small process or a thing. Like, kind of like, were you just like, we just keeping this a secret, hiding it under the bed? Like, how did that work? I guess come to
Mm.
was that something that was just like a download, or was it something that was kind of a building process of information?
I
Like,
think a combination of both. I really do. I think it was a combination of both. I'd had a sabbatical from acupuncture for a little while. I came back here after I found Mum passed. All I kept getting was build it and they will come. And the other thing was the Soul's Apprenticeship. This is finding Mum. Everything up until that point, finding, we were friends when I found my partner hanging from a ceiling too, right? So it's just like, you know, I could either allow myself to be entrapped in the story of what was happening to me, or I had to decide whether there was a higher order or I was going to go insane. There was one or the other. And I chose the higher order, the higher plan. I'm like, this cannot happen to one person so many times and not have a higher meaning to it.
yeah,
So by the time the experience with Mum came into play, all I knew was that everything pre this was my soul's apprenticeship. Everything had been preparing me for this moment.
mm,
And I'm home to deal with everything I had to deal with, a really heavy breakup that year, everything with dad, and now dad passing recently as well, the integration. I always said, Mum is my soul's apprenticeship, dad is my soul mastery. And so now it's this deep place that I'm, this next level of calling. But to stay with your question is like, you know, in that time, the soul apprenticeship was a combination of channeling and an amalgamation of all of my experiences primarily. There
yeah,
was one, and literally I didn't mark it. It was just a calling. I think you didn't see me for quite a while there, and this room on the end of my house, I barely get to leave because it's the calling of what I do, right? So it just became this word of mouth experience, and
mm,
the momentum builds to becoming the soul apprenticeship, to the point where I started to put the business model behind it, and I was told it would never work. I went to a month-long incubation and basically humiliated in front of the whole group, and that's okay because it gave me more strength, and these triggers that we get, the triggers when we feel deeply triggered, when we're in those deepest places of fear, anxiety, depressions. These are the places that I have learned to lean into, to integrate, to learn how to translate. Because what we have been taught is to think positive, think positive, think positive. And
mm,
so we end up overriding, overcompensating the very processes we're being called into. And so it keeps amplifying, amplifying, and amplifying until we get to see, hear, and love this part of ourselves that is calling us into the transformation, because we created this part of ourselves in a time that did not feel seen, heard, and loved. And what I came to understand was the emotions were the language of the soul.
mm,
Our emotions, non-physical vibrations that have a huge impact on physical reality, manifestation. So if we're holding these episodic memories that are attached, so memories that we have a life experience that we receive a message from, attach an emotion to, and down into the subconscious it goes.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
And so we're holding these frequencies, these vibrations in our physical embodiment experience. Vibrations are magnetizations of experiences. With emotions, we're designed to bond. Yeah, we're designed to bond. So we're bonding unconsciously or consciously. And when we have a trigger that's coming in, it's triggering us into awakening. But we have a trigger, we go, oh my God, pain, fear, confusion, freak out. And we send every flight and fight response through our body. And we keep generating that sensation. We're sentient beings on a sentient planet. So when we can be with the comfortability of these experiences, and I was watching this continually, like I'd spend 12 hours a day with people, one after the other, one after the other. And people were like, how are you doing it? And it was like through me, not of me. And then
Yes.
I just keep capturing everything I was doing. And then what I started to really realize is that I was coming out of a therapy model into a transformational model.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
I coined trilogy of transformation, cognitive, neural, and energetic, an integrative model that allows the full transformation. I believe this on our planet right now. I know on our planet right now, our central nervous system is going through the deepest upgrade we have ever been through.
Mm.
And so the anxieties, the depressions, the fears that we are seeing is the recalibration that's going to happen. But nobody's taught us how to sit into that, to let the transformation move through all these old memories, all these old programs. If your computer says no, just like this computer that we're on now, if
Mm.
it has a program,
Mm.
that's the only program we're going to be allowed to use, right?
Mm.
Our central nervous systems are going through this upgrade for a new programming, a new lens of perception. Yeah, the perception through which we stop amplifying this pain and we alchemize it to freedom.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. And I think it's interesting when you were saying you learnt to sit with it, and I think at this stage, just to talk about I guess the things that you practiced to,
Mm,
how did you sit? Like you'd spent so much time running from it. How did you learn to sit
mm,
on it? Was it meditation?
yeah.
I know from doing some of your processes, you do some EFT tapping.
Mm,
We've done the EFT tapping as well as the affirmation creation. So there's a couple of processes. There's some you know not timeline therapy. I wouldn't call it that. I'd say like not even regression, but it through the meditation of locating the emotion in the body to then go
I've
and
called it sensory transformation.
sensory transformation. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I like it. um, so there's all these different little, I guess, moving parts of the bigger whole. And
Mm,
what were some of the things that you were practicing at that time that enabled you to sit with this transformation? Because I remember
mm.
talking to you when you were like, "Oh my God, it feels like I'm on a rocket ship. I'm going through another upgrade," and I'm like, "All right, cool. Hold on." you
I'll
know,
let go.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like for people that get to that point and turn the other way, what can they do?
Yeah, sure. And again, like you were saying before, a culmination of life experiences. So, I'd sat Vipassana 5 times by that stage and I learned how to observe, right?
Mm.
Being with sensation, observing sensation. Um, and I feel like it was a little bit later, the combination of quite a few processes and modalities I'd studied and integrated in the meditations, but it was the full-blown PTSD. It was the full-blown PTSD that taught me how to sit with this.
Yeah.
And mm, it was like I was living in a waking nightmare. It was, I'd be driving, and as I've shared with you before, a blanket in the back of my car would look like a dead body, or I'd
Mm.
have polar flashes. There was just nowhere I could be without this insanity that was going on in my head. And the only place I could be was under a doona with my eyes closed, sleeping, right? And I was told I was going to be on antipsychotics and antidepressants for the rest of my life. And I always like to make a caveat here that I am not anti-medication. I think there is this time and a space.
Mm.
And for those who do not have the tools to have space from such acute triggers, yeah, that it doesn't give the central nervous system time for you to give you the space to recalibrate, that they can really support a process without dependency, but as a tool to support an integration process. But at this stage I was in full-blown PTSD, and I knew that blanket wasn't a dead body in the back of my car. I knew the absurdity of, I could observe my thoughts, but I couldn't control them at that stage, yeah. And I
That's one of the main differences, I think, for people that don't understand the difference, that it's not just I'm having a random flood of bad memories, or like it's cognitively that this is not happening, but emotionally
mm,
can't unhook from this thought that was there in your waking life. Is that right?
for me, yes. When I've journeyed with people in similar situations that haven't had any tools in the kit bag of life, it is their reality. There's no differentiation. That's a dead body in the back of the car. That's
Right.
someone hanging tree as you're walking past, right? There's no differentiation. Yeah. Luckily, enough tools in my kit bag to differentiate. There was enough of a crack there, which is why I chose not to take the medication. I just knew there had to be another way. But it to the edge so far. And I found a beautiful man who in cognitive behavioral therapy in Brisbane, which led me to study cognitive behavioral therapy. Who I walked in, I had to drive from the Gold Coast to Brisbane, and I was in full-blown PTSD. I had a full episode on the highway. By the time I got to his office, I was like doing the rocks, the fetal position. I just wanted to crawl on his floor and go to the fetal position.
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember you telling me about this and working with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And he'd worked with the 9/11 crew. 9/11 was on around that time. War vets, like he done extensive work. And he sort of brought me in, sat me down, calmed me down a fair bit, got me to do a little bit of breath work. And he leaned over to me and he's like, "Now, Michelle, I want you to thank the trigger." And I was like, "What would I want to do that for?" I was like, "Are you crazy? Why would I want to thank this experience?" And he's like, "And breathe," right? And so what I learned to do, and then I got it. I got it about 5 minutes later. And what it allowed me to do was understand how to intercept the biofeedback of the amygdala and the central nervous system that was telling me I was unsafe. My brain, my whole being was doing exactly what it was supposed to do based on the lens of perception that I was unsafe. Like, and it got to the point where I had found so many beautiful people that I loved passed away, toxic relationships, rolled in business, list goes on, that if my being let me out of that door, I walk out into the world was not a safe place. My lens of perception was living that. The world is not a safe place for me to be in. So my body was doing exactly what it needed to do, was to keep me safe, right? So once I was able to lean into the trigger, the negative, bad experience, thank that experience, I could switch my amygdala off. I could intercept the biofeedback, which would give me space to step into the transformational experience. Breathe, right? So, of course, wax on, wax off. It takes work.
That's practice.
But what I then built on, okay?
I said it takes practice.
Yeah. We don't go to the gym once or practice yoga once and become right. But I had the insight that day, and to answer your question, that's where that pivotal point was.
Yeah, that's it. And something that you do, when we sit down and do these, little journeys into self-awareness, is, you'll definitely speak to the breath and, a little bit of breath work in there, just to help settle the nervous system before we lean into whatever that thing is. Yeah, and I feel like, for me, yeah, the breath work has been a really big activator to help me be able to lean in rather than run farm. And I notice when I'm really lost in the trigger or whatever it is, that I'm just cut off into chest breathing. I'm not breathing deeply, or I'm breathing erratically and fast. My eye movement's going off 1 to the dozen. That's kind of how my body responds. And now that I know that, I can catch myself, and it's become muscle memory that I've noticed when I start going there, and then the automatic response is to breathe and start sending it deeper into my belly and get that belly breath so I can get grounded, and then I can see properly. Because as you know, once we start getting triggered, the whole frontal lobe of the brain becomes detached, and all the blood reserves run to the extremities so that we can fight, flight, or freeze, whatever we need to do, and we stop thinking clearly. We can't really contact those parts of ourselves that have clear cognitive rational thought. We can't observe, like in the the witness mind, which you do in Vipassana, this ability to observe all the elements of oneself without having to react or respond to them, but just noticing.
Bodies.
When you're in the trigger. So the practice of you doing this sort of daily work with other people and as well with yourself just kind of built up I guess, a momentum. Is that how you, would that be one way to describe it? Of like being able to catch yourself as you're going into this stuff?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the power of choice, it's what I call the conscious timelines, where unconscious and conscious timelines meet themselves. So where our old unconscious timeline, that alter ego, that beautiful shadow self, and our consciousness in Chinese medicine, everything has a yin and yang component in TCM, and the foundation is the five element theory that I've superimposed um, all of my other beautiful studies in.
Mm.
So the first element is spleen, earth element that's connected to the neocortex of the brain. From earth, everything's birthed. And this is where we dive deep into the soul contracts and the causative issues. So we're no longer um, victim to our circumstances, whether it's an internal or an external life experience, right?
Mm.
And so, with every process of journeying with a beautiful being and my own process, the integration came through. The second phase of the transformational experience is lung, reptilian brain, metal energy, yeah, reptilian brain. So the breathing that you're talking about takes us off automation, yeah. But the reptilian brain also has, the physiological automations of keeping your heart beating, keeping your breath going. And I know me, I want those automations to keep.
It's working. Yeah.
I'd probably forget. So it's like, but then we've got the automation of our emotional responses, yeah. And our emotions are the linchpin between our physical and mental connection.
Mhm.
And through the breath, I always like to call it the consciousness dial.
Mm.
The more connected we are to the breath, the more we're in the driver's seat. We're off automation. We're off the automation flight and fight. And that gets us into the place of using that power of choice to the intersection of unconscious and conscious. And when we get to that place, right where we're about to transform,
Mm.
is the power of choice. And that's where I really understood that a lot of humans don't realize they have that power of choice.
Yeah.
I started listening for so many people just going, well, that's it. That's my lot. This is what I've been told. This is what it's going to be for the rest of my life. As was I. You're going to be on antipsychotics and antidepressants for the rest of your life.
Mm.
Remember sitting there just going, there's got to be another choice here. There's
Mhm.
got to be another choice. And there were some dark days, where I really thought about opting out and going with my brothers and the rest of my family.
Well, I'm
And I
glad.
came pretty close. Hmm?
I said I'm glad you didn't.
Me too.
But I think it's important. Like, I mean, I work with the guys next door at the Red Door, which are lived experience facilitators. Like they have their own recovery story and they go and help people with mental health issues in the community and help them. And I feel like peer-to-peer recovery with somebody who's done study is just so much
Huge.
more powerful and so much more valuable than peer
Yeah.
therapists. The power
Yeah.
dynamic. Oh, well, I just would never, I don't know what you're talking about, but this is what I think you should do. And it's like, but
Mm.
you don't know me. Whereas, like,
Mm.
I've been through this and
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I have an authentic story around this transformation. Like, I'm going to,
Mm.
like, my gut instinct is, yeah, I trust you because you've got the sort of wellness that I'm looking for. Like, you have the results of this working out. And so
Okay.
help me step through the process. Um,
Mm.
but interesting what you were saying before about the power of choice, because we were talking about this in a workshop the other night with John Nutting, and we were talking about the dis-ease of black and white thinking, the singularity, where it's just like the, you know, this is the way it is. I think this, therefore the world is like that, and we're speaking more specifically about belief systems and all that type of stuff. But the more I hear
Mm.
you talk about it, the more it makes sense for me that, the problem
Mm.
that through the condition of making that same choice over and over and over and over and over again becomes so powerful and so strong. Like, they talk about the samskaras in yoga or the vritti, the fluctuation of the mind or whatever. They become
Mm.
strong that we forget that there's a million other potential possibilities rather than just this one, but we just
Mm.
forget because we just
Mm.
keep doing it. Um,
Mm.
and
Mm.
you know, I certainly have had that experience, you know, and really thankful to not have that experience as much anymore. No, it's
Yeah.
onion, but they're better quality problems these days than they used to be. So happy days.
Sure. And look, there's always going to be another upgrade. There's always going to be another layer to move through
Mm.
until we exit. I think you know, about sort of 6 years back, I thought, oh, I've cracked it. And boofa, in came the next one. I was like, okay. Okay. I just get better at this. Like I get to master this process, right? And the key energy, that anchor, I know where my anchor is now. So it doesn't become highs and lows, it becomes ebbs and flows.
Oh,
And when we understand the power of the lens of perception, that the mirror neurons and the emotions are like the pixels of the camera through which we see. So if we've got 90% of the human experience is negative, right? So 84% of the memories that we have, the thoughts we have, are the same thoughts we have the day before. So we're trying to think positive and we're trying to override when everything in the hard drive on our computer is looking through this old lens of perception from this memory we had from under the age of 7.
mm,
And we
mm,
keep moving through that till it amplifies to that WTF moment till we have to look at it,
mm,
right? Because it wants to be seen. And this is the yin effect. This is the dark night of the soul, the
mm,
yin and the yang. You know, we've polarized, we've become overstimulated and underintegrated in the pursuit of right and wrong, good and bad, success and failure, that we've forgotten to be with the power of the now, to observe what is, not what should be, not what could be, not what our lens of perception is telling us. This is why people will go and put their hand on the Bible and swear in a court of law. That is what I saw. And I see this so much in relationship, in relating to others. We get so caught up on the human behavior. It's never about the human behavior, it's what's driving the human behavior. And as long as we're projecting and we're stuck in that trigger, we're going to keep calling it in until we activate into the awakening to the alignment of our highest truth, to serve that highest truth, to move out of overwhelm into overflow.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. I like that description.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I say something similar to my students. It's like we don't, you know, we can't control the ocean. All we can do is learn to be better sailors. You know, it's not, it's,
Love it.
you know, the ocean is infinite. It's dark and it's deep and it's you know, unruly. You can't do
Mm,
anything about it, but you can get better at noticing how the waves pitch and, you know, when to
totally.
hoist the sail, when to buckle down. You know, like.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Mm,
this is the soul value that I keep talking about, right? That's the anchor, the kidney energy. So return
mm,
to that place within us, so we're not caught in these emotions, these oceans of emotions.
mm,
Anchored, we're moored, so that when the ebb and the flow, because there's always going to be ebb and flow, and this is why I dance with the idea of balance, because there's always going to be movement. But when we're anchored, when the tides are ebbing and flowing, we don't get pulled with those tides and polarize. Yeah,
mm,
we're able to really sit in, anchor into the embodiment experience. This is true embodiment work, to drop in and know the power of the now, and everything gets to move around that because you're connected to the source essence of who you are through the kidney energy. The vitality gates get to open. The kidneys rule the brain, the spine, they're so powerful. They're the oil burners, but we're churning and burning that energy because our messengers, our flight and fight responses are running 90% of the show. So we're getting this cortisol, we're continually in flight and fight, and the anxiety and the depressions that are amplifying on this planet right now is calling us because we're not in the world is within us. Every element in our body represents an element in nature. We are the micro to the macro. And when we get that, the critical mass on this planet is going to start tipping. We'll come out of competition into collaboration and start to create a thriving human ecosystem that is alive, awake, and living, not surviving.
mm. Yeah, and that's I think that was one of my big takeaways of a lot of your work is to you know, transform that victim poverty consciousness into the enough consciousness, and it's something that I've really integrated into my sharing, my teachings as well. Is that
Mm,
through the power of equanimity, that being able to sit in that middle place because you've done the work to unhook the baggage of the past, you can more easily find that. And you describe it as the anchor. You know, I describe it as this sort of, you know, this middle way, this equanimity that, you
mm,
know, it's just the pendulum swings either side. But now these days, the pendulum doesn't swing so far. and the
Mm,
mind feels a lot more calm. And then when life does what life does, I've got the resources
mm,
to be able to to surf it as it comes through, and not come unhinged and fall down the spiral of negative behaviors and thoughts and reactivity.
mm,
Clean up the giant
mm.
mess that you need to come and pick me up off the floor years ago to go, what's going on? I'll be like, well, yeah, I think I may have fallen over. But anyway,
Cam, is it 3 a.m.? I loved it.
yeah.
Good menu.
And so I guess the next part is, so through that process, because we made it up to the kidney energy. Was there more you wanted to share on the process before I ask you all about like what the indicators were for you that things were working through this process for you, or do you want to move into that question now?
Either or, sweetie. Yeah. So, I mean, there's two more phases to the process, which is the alignment to the liver energy, the alignment, which every emotion houses certain emotions in their unconscious or conscious form, negative or positive. I don't like using that language because we have such a connotation to it, expanded or contracted.
I like the shades of the mountain, like the traditional Chinese medicine way of going. It's the same mountain, depending on the time
Mm,
of day. It's got shades and it's got sun on it, but it's just the same mountain. And when I kind of
mm,
got that through doing my yin training, I was like,
mm,
now I get what Misha's been talking about the whole time. I was like, now I kind of can join the dots as to this contractive and expansive experience within the one
mm,
organism. It's one organism, so it's like,
mm,
like labeling it as good or bad, right or wrong is like
mm.
they're just different qualities of the shadow and light, So but anyway.
And and all needed. There's no wrong experience. There's no
Mm,
wrong experience. There's no wrong emotion.
mm.
A translation piece that I think I will bang on until I leave this planet. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it'll be on a tombstone. The translation of Mishwa.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and this
That's liver. Was it liver energy you were saying then? Now, no.
liver energy. Yeah, the liver energy. So the three phases. So the fourth phase is liver, so the alignment to the yang aspect of the soul. So the lung energy is the yin, the yang aspect of the soul, which is the universal mind. Yeah. And so, but we get so disconnected from this part of who we truly are because our shadow selves are running the show. So once this part of ourselves has been brought out of the shadow and into the light, we align into the kidney energy. We become aligned. We know where we are on the map of life. We've got our North Star, our Earth, so we can never be lost again. We know our true value. We know the essence. We're no longer in willpower or in free will to then connect and bring in that dreaming. So many of us have a vision and a dream that feels so close but yet so far away. But
Mm,
every time it's so close, booyah, the trigger comes in or the old shit kicks in. It's like, oof, we feel like back to square one, right? Just as we're about to walk through what I call the gateway of transformation.
mm,
When you have these tools, you know the power of choice to make to stay in the alignment. And even if you're feeling anger, frustration, anger is such an emotion that has been so shamed, but in its unconscious form, anger is saying that I feel powerless under threat and I need to protect myself. So we become disconnected to this vision and the essence of who we truly are out of protection, which
mm,
makes it very hard for us to connect, right? But when we're in this alignment and the expanded vision, the version of the expanded connection to the liver is flow. But anger, it can also, in its expanded form, in its conscious form, is asking us to reclaim the power because the element of the liver is wood,
mm,
and wood is the precursor to heart, which is the fifth phase. So the wood, when it's enraged, it's like the phoenix rising, yeah. And so anger is asking us to burn off the old cycle and complete and come home to the heart of our matter to truly open our heart, yeah, because we become embodied in our vision. We bring that vision in. The ethereal soul gets to drop in. We get to move into unity consciousness,
mm,
open the heart to manifest and create a life by soulful design.
mm.
Because all those emotions converge into the heart space, which is like a camera that beams up into the mirror of life through the conscious emotional picture, the pixels of our emotions to manifest and create and attract all that we desire. So we create a life by soulful design in alignment to the vision and the soul mission that we are here to activate and gift the world with through the gift and the presence of who we are.
Mm. It's interesting that you mentioned, because we were talking about like healthy anger versus unhealthy anger the other night, and uh, having that healthy anger to set boundaries and to like burn away, like make those choices, reclaim power, burn away
Mm,
those processes of that no longer serve you. You know, to say like,
mm,
like the best way I can think about it, it's like really firm boundary setting, you know, and that can be a really good thing. That can be a really positive thing, because when you create those new ideas, then you're communicating to the world, this is how I will be treated, you know, this is how it will be,
mm,
this is what I will let in,
mm,
I'll let it in.
mm,
And essentially,
mm,
from my understanding of traditional Chinese medicine, it's almost like that's the pericardium, like the, you know, the heart's bouncer saying, I've decided what I will or won't let in. And then now
mm,
once I made that conscious decision, that discernment, which I feel
mm,
like comes from a healthy use of anchor, it goes, no, I have
mm,
my discernment here about what I will allow into my experience of life. And
mm,
then after that, it's just free flow into the heart, and then the expansion can occur, you know.
mm,
Because yeah, and it's interesting as well in my reflections of the times where I was caught in, you know, layers of anger, and being able to sit through it, to then drop into what was actually underneath that, to allow me to feel that stuff so that I could heal that stuff, you know, because
mm,
beforehand,
mm,
reactivity based on, I don't like feeling like this and it's your fault and
mm,
blame and all that, you know, whereas learning
mm.
to sit with it has allowed me to sort of, you know, heal those stuff, those deeper layers, you know.
Yeah, powerful. Yeah, and look, learning to consciously respond to our unconscious reactions is mastery. You know what I mean? Because there's always going to be another unconscious, we'll get sensation, oof, but we can consciously respond to that without projecting. Yeah. We can come into that place of sitting into it and welcoming that process in. Yeah. And I love the differentiation there between boundaries and discernment as well, right? There was a time where um you know I was going through a pretty significant phase, and I was being told a lot of times, you don't have any boundaries, Mish, you don't have any boundaries, you don't have any boundaries. And I'm like, what's this boundary stuff, you know? And so I tried on boundaries, Dalai Lama, try it on and see if it fits. And so for me, in my expression, my experience of boundaries at that time was almost like a protection mechanism. The pericardium is the protector of the heart, right? And again, depending on the lens of perception, and again, it's all intention, and everybody has different intentions. But my experience of boundaries at the time was this ultimatum: if you cross my boundary, you are offending me. You have done something wrong to me.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So once, and it just didn't feel right. It wasn't a two-way exchange. So I went, okay, I've got the lesson from what you're trying to hand me here. This is like my early 20s. And I sort of, as time unfolds, as you do, you get wiser, older, you know, drop the boundaries, because I lost trust in my discernment in my early days, because it was like, Jesus, you know, even though the world saw me as a very confident person, underneath I trust in my judgment. Yeah. And so what I regained through the transformational process was the trust in my judgment, to stand strong in that, to serve my highest truth, to invite someone in to meet me in a sacred container. So your truth and my truth may be two different truths, and that's okay. But when we come together, when two minds come together, a third is created. True masterminding, true transformation. So there's no wrong or right perception. But what we're learning on this planet right now is first seek to understand before being understood. We're all fighting to be heard, to be seen, to stand for, yeah. But we're missing it, which is why we've got this cancel culture going on, teen cutting. I'm just about to write a blog on teen cutting. The pressure these kids are going through is outright.
You mean,
Okay.
is that self-harm?
Oh yeah, it's rife. It's rife. Yeah, and I'm working with some beautiful teens at the moment. that's a whole segue, but it's understanding how to hold ourselves and know what our truth is and what our reality is, to stand in that, but be open enough to meet with another, to consciously react, first self-regulate, to co-relate.
And you
Yeah.
know, it's interesting. It's funny that a segue on that point, like with the workshop that I did the other weekend up in the Blue Mountains about the, you know, couples understanding couples.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
so the start of the workshop was about self-regulation, self-awareness.
mm,
But part of the
mm,
whole coming to the workshop was like, well, you know, you need a certain level of self-awareness to have chosen to do this for your weekend. So most everybody
mm,
was pretty much on that level. Um,
mm,
and also, she was very clear at saying, you know, if you need relationship counseling, this isn't for you. We'll do that privately.
mm,
Only come to the
mm,
workshop if the relationship's well and you want to go deeper. But she spoke for the first
mm,
time about healthy co-regulation. And I loved it
mm,
because it was this idea of when people have these systems that they you know, build up when they're kids about their attachment modalities. You know, some people become very reactive and really intense to try and get their needs, and some people go into that, you know, detached, aloof. And she just gave us some really simple tools about, you know, when somebody's going this, you know, feverish, like out there, just to lean in and to actually touch and to say, I'm here with you, I'm listening, you know, I'm like, I'm
mm,
here, I'm here.
mm,
Which is something
mm.
that is a bit different because the initial energy of the outburst towards you creates the opposite. You try to push it back,
Yeah,
right? So it's about that
yeah,
in again. And then also
yeah.
when that person is going into the distance and moving off, it's about going, yeah, cool, I'm just going to give you that space. So in that way, it helps
Mm,
me understand, because, you know, with Sarah and myself, we have very different attachment styles, the complete opposite
mm,
actually. And so to look,
mm,
that's what our needs are, has been a really
mm,
skillful way of being able to sit with us, keep
beautiful.
active. And yeah, so I feel like there's been lots of wonderful learning from that stuff that you know, certainly helps
Mm,
and deepen our relationship, which has been great.
yummy, yummy.
I was going to ask. So now we've sort of talked about the transformative process and how that came together. Was there a moment, I guess, where you had a little light bulb and you were like, I don't have those same problems anymore? Like maybe you go through like the up levels and stuff, but as far as like a sensation or a feeling of like, I've got this, or was there a moment where you're like, I am now living well, like I'm now okay, I'm safe,
Mm,
I'm I've got this, is I guess the best way I can describe. And I kind of like look at this as the, you know, what happened next phase. It's like, did
mm.
I have a marker where I could go, yeah, it's worked? And like, did you have that experience?
I think there's been a number of them,
Yeah.
you know. I think there's been a number of them along the way. Um, hmm.
I can speak to one, like whether I noticed when I think maybe it wasn't long after you married Craig, but it was being in that house on that land. There was just
Mm,
a sense of integration and a sense of connectedness that had come, of like acceptance, like this is my home. And I remember
mm.
looking at you and just going, yeah, this is your place. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this is it, you know. And um, that sort of like not gypsy energy, but the need to be darting off here and there and all these, you know, moving that transient
Mm,
bit like energy.
mm,
I'd really,
mm.
and I guess that
That,
was
oh, totally. Well, I finally had a home, right? I finally had a home, and I think it was 6 months after Mum passing, and a dog. I remember Lulu, like she was so old she could barely see, hear, walk, but that dog kept me going because initially after Mum passed, everything that was going on after that heavy breakup, and Dad losing his nut about a lot of stuff, and I was selling everything, going to Mexico and importing jewelry, so
right.
that trans spirit was still wanting to come through, right? I'm like, I'm out of here. No
Yeah.
one will ever see me, and that's it. I'm gone. And yeah, I'd already picked the property out, like, and it was Lulu that kept me still. And I remember it was Mother's Day, and I remember laying on the floor having a glass of wine with Lulu. It was Mother's Day, and I finally realized I was home. I finally realized I was home,
Mm.
and there was nothing to run to. And I wanted to connect myself with the land. You know, you're healing and teaching Havens Mum's legacy.
Mm.
And, you know, I've always had a beautiful resonation with the Indigenous teachings, and when I did some research on the property and the land around here, and found this beautiful story of the Mbudi tried to go and walk about with the little ones up to Cairns. We're in the hinterland of the Gold Coast, and the little ones were crying to the elders, Yambalila, Yambalila, and they meant to come home. And that's exactly what I called the land, Yambalila, right? Because I come home, and the amount of people that walk onto this property and go, oh my God, I just feel like I'm at home. I feel like and I just watch the frenetic stress of the busyness of every day left at the gate, and especially my city friends when they come visit, I watch them slowly just I might go over sleep.
Especially after, like, sitting there going through COVID up here, and it's like literally war of the toilet paper stealer going on in Mount Gravatt, and like people were literally ready to have knife fights over paper, and then suddenly you're like, yeah, there's this COVID thing, right? Yeah, that's not good. And I'm like, yeah, I've got to come.
I literally, when COVID first hit, I did not come up for 3 months. I did not. I literally, the rotation through my door and my programs it tripled. It literally tripled, because people had to stop and look at this not enough pandemic that was going on within them. That was the symbology for me of the toilet paper issue, just not enough.
There's enough. We live in Australia. It's cool. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I guess just to wrap things up, because we could talk forever, and I hope that we can talk again at some stage and explore different elements of the world and all of its wonderful parts. But I guess just to sort of sum up and to finish off, 3 pieces of wisdom or 3 pieces of advice or observations that you would hand to somebody who's at the beginning of this journey, or knocking on the door of unconsciousness and feeling really confused and lost, or those big WTF moments that you were going through, or 3 parts of wisdom that you'd like to leave for those who just watching this video going, yeah, I'm at the start of this journey. Where do I go?
Or even not just at the start of the journey, being on the journey and still, how do I break the freedom code? It's just like, how much more work do I have to do?
Right.
Right. Yeah. And what I would say is let go of positive thinking and come into an integrative lens of perception, that there is no wrong experience there, and allow yourself to welcome the negative experiences, because that's your gateway to freedom. Learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. When recurring life cycles, patterns, behaviors, and emotions kick in, welcome them in. Just welcome them in and learn how to just be with that part of you. And so many people ask me, what is self-love? That is self-love. It's not persecuting that side of yourself. It's not making it wrong or bad. It's learning how to sit with that part, because that's your gateway to freedom. And 100% own your human experience. It's the only way. It's no one else's experience but yours.
Oh, that's great. That's nice and clear. Thank you. And I resonate with all of that stuff. So namaste. And
namaste.
Links down to Soul Apprenticeship and all of your offerings on underneath the YouTube there, and the guys can reach out and get in contact. Is there anything coming up that you want to mention that people can be a part of?
The next Soul Apprenticeship will be coming up in about a month's time, so I'll send you the link for that. Right. And then people can check out the magic.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks for your time, Michelle. It's been a pleasure. And and hopefully we'll get to talk again. And for those of you that have just tuned in, I've got all the links in the comments there. So just jump on there and you can click through and find out about Mish and myself and the foundation method. And if this is interesting to you, you can come through and do my free training. And I talk about 6 of the biggest problems and 6 of the high quality solutions that took me most of my life to figure out, to guide me on steps to living well in my life. So it's been an absolute pleasure. My sister from another mister.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, no, And we'll see
And
you.
do his course too. Make sure you do his course. It's amazing.
All right. Thanks. I'll see you soon.
Love you. Bye.